good news all across the fruited plain of America. This is the time of Thanksgiving, and this is our live show right now. And by the way, I'm excited to have Mercedes Sparks here to my right. Your trusty fact checker. So
yeah, you took my spot. Can we just talk about this for a minute?
What? Go ahead.
What happened?
What?
Why are we down here?
What?
I've been relegated to this glass desk, and you are now all the way over here in my spot, like normal. You're not on the main stage.
We've reversed places.
Yes.
And I used to have a higher and more exalted part of the studio. Now I'm down here.
Mm-hmm. This is where we do our podcast. For those of us who don't catch us on the podcast, we're giving it more of a podcast vibe.
Yeah, this is the podcast, and so the podcast is a little bit more powerful, I think, because it's less focused on news cycles. Because we have a lot of Real America's Voice from station to station. I know everybody's covering the news, and I'm thinking, well, the difference is the perspective on the events that I think get missed. And so in the news cycle, we do miss stuff. So for instance, we have the way in which the news was covering Kyle Rittenhouse. We're going to cover that for a second. The story here I want to focus on is the difference between the way in which the left controlled media, which is really an extension of the Democratic Party. And it's unfortunate because they have multi-billion dollars worth of extra party apparatus because they have the entire news media, with the exception of a couple of speakers on Fox and a couple of Newsmax or One American News people and programs like this. But by and large, they're all working for the Democrats. And the proof of that is the way that they lie about the news, because we're in a constant battle of public persuasion. And public persuasion is based on people getting the right facts. Now, I was reading something from Matt Walsh the other day. You might remember something that happened. Remember that guy that went in? I think it was that white, crazy supremacist guy that went into like the prayer meeting in Charlotte years ago, and his name was Dylan Roof. And here's what Matt says. We knew, and he shot people up in that meeting, shot them all. We knew everything about Dylan Roof's motives within about 30 minutes of police apprehending him. That's the advantage of taking these guys alive. You know why they were doing what they did. His point here is, why is it that after you have apprehended the guy that was running over people zigzag intentionally to kill them up in Wisconsin, that the news stations are stumbling over themselves to call it a vehicular incident, or give an excuse? The guy's apprehended, but it was an accident. He was fleeing from the scene of where there were shots going on. So in other words, they lie in order to misdirect the motivations, because they don't want, they could pull it right away. Remember when Kyle goes out there, it's immediate. This is a Trump-supporting, rifle-bearing, going across state lines, white supremacist. That was the narrative from day one. They had no facts. But when they have somebody who's guilty, you could tell that it's going to be bad for the Democrats because they never can figure out the motive, and they can never get the fact. They mitigate the crime. Matt goes on in another post here on Twitter, the Waukesha killer is in custody. Has he not said anything? Had the police not asked him why he did it? 2 days later, and they're still acting like his motives are a great mystery. I wonder why. And somebody writes to him, are you suggesting the police are covering his motives up for some nefarious purpose? And he writes, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's correct. And so you have this. And then you have this other bizarre realization that, is there any motives that we can find out? Well, we have social media history. Everybody's got a digital footprint. So it's like the DNA at a crime scene. And now they find out he's got all these BLM, statements. He's got his racist statements. He's got his hating, F them up, jargon that he's got. And what's strange is it's suddenly all disappearing. It's like he's got a defense team is trying to scrub his history so that people can't go. Now, if this guy was a MAGA hat, supremacist, and they have any data on him, you'd see it in the news. They'd be quoting what he did rather than trying to cover it up. But people got screenshots. So the only reason we have the information is because people that know how the left works, they went right away to go get screenshots, and bam, here's the evidence. So what I'm saying is that there is a serious problem when it comes to the subject of actual justice in America when we don't even have a common playbook that says this is right and this is wrong. And I think the problem is on the right, and this is the disadvantage of the conservatives as a whole. And Jordan Peterson points this out. You have definite boundaries regarding white, supremacy or racism on the right. There's a clear boundary. On the left, you don't have that boundary. So if you've got the armed Black Panthers who are ready and locked and loaded and carrying weapons down where in Georgia, and they're waiting for the results of today's verdict, which came out with a sigh of relief to Americans that these three white guys are all been found guilty by a jury. Well, isn't it interesting that nobody's commenting on the intimidating, dangerous, incendiary nature of armed? Imagine if you had white armed militia outside there to protest the verdict. What I'm saying is you don't have an America now with the temperament to continue to accommodate this spirit. I think it's going to work a backlash on the left. I think the independents are even more. You're looking at the data that's coming out on the independent voters, and they're beginning to lump all of these items together with the Democrats, which is where they belong, because the guy that was loose, with this latest incident, as you look at his rap sheet, which is like, probably around 7 incidents long on a page of having been arrested for, oddly enough, using a vehicle to run over an ex wife of his or partner. And you're looking at this stuff, and you see how the awareness of the American people is now creating a question, which is, why was he loose on bail, $1,000 bail twice? He was wanted in Nevada for an assault, sexual assault, and yet he was released there on minimum bail, like $1,000, so that he could go kill more people. But that's not the only incident. There's a liberal reporter, liberal, I'm pointing out on purpose. There's a liberal reporter, and it's in the Washington Post, who has an article today covering 3 other similar incidents where the bail policy of just letting criminals out. This is like when Soros is funding the DAs not to prosecute crime and not to really protect the citizens and dumping people out on the streets. This is all part of the value system of the Democratic Party extreme, which is now the mainstream of Democratic legislation. So I think this is all hitting a tipping point. It's hitting a point where the country isn't looking at this with the same stunned, glazed inability to respond that it had when the George Floyd incident happened. And what's taking place now is there is not an inclination to try to be sympathetic with the situation. Now there's a different reaction happening. And I take that as a positive and a dangerous development, because it means that the more radical the left gets, the less accommodating the national disposition is in that direction. This is going to be bad for Democrats in midterms, but we're going to really have to pray as Christians that that there is a kind of a peace that can come upon the nation. And you don't have a president in Biden, unfortunately, who has the ability, like previous presidents, like Kennedy did during the civil rights standoff in Alabama, to go to the microphone and make a reasonable case for how America needs to have a national, in a sense, contract of moving forward and understanding the pain that people have and understanding the necessity of the rule of law. You don't have that with Biden, because Biden is shaquad, as we would say up in Rhode Island. He starts off by giving his own, this like he's a Harvard lawyer. He gave his own verdict on Kyle Rittenhouse, which was the party line. He's a white supremacist, without even having the facts, without even having the self-discipline to say, I'm not going to comment on this because the young man's life's at stake. We trust the jury's going to have the facts. Let's wait and see what they say. No, he had to come out with his Dumbo opinion, so which unfortunately never isn't even being called into question, except by Kyle, who has a right to challenge him about this. Any thoughts on this, Mercedes, before we go to our?
No, you're on a roll. I mean, I'm not going to interrupt.
Well, I'm just saying. We got a chat thread. If you want to comment on this, you can let us know your thoughts, because I do think the main takeaway is the news will not cover anything that reflects negatively on their policies, and it makes you wonder instantly. What are the facts regarding any news cycle? Because it's like you have to wrestle to get the truth. But I think a backlash is forming, and I think the American people are waking up, and it's a combination of several factors, not the least of which is that the economy right now, I hate to say it, but the Americans, they may be upset about injustice in burning cities, but boy, when the price of gas goes up, that's when you're really going to get the American response. And that milk and that chicken and that turkey, well, suddenly you've hit, I'm sorry to say, Americans where they care most, and it's the financial impact of things.
It is. It's when you have to make a choice between your gas or your mortgage payment. That's when people start to wake up. That's when independents start to wake up.
Well, and listen, I just want to say this. I got 30 seconds here to make a point that regarding this whole the handling of the economy, one thing we can count on is that all of the trillions of dollars of dumb spending that's being done is going to look less and less intelligent as inflation goes, because the average American right now is equating spending and big government with inflation. And this is all good. I'm telling you, then Thanksgiving, this is a time to be thankful because the fog is lifting. If you're like me, you want to get the material immediately. That's sometimes why I like to get the ebook, or I like to get the digital course or the MP3. Therefore, we have LanceWallnau.com/Cyber Monday resources for those of you that want to be able to access our exclusive membership site where we have deep discounts on our top training courses. You can access it right away. We've got the Level 10 Leader Series, helping you identify where it is that your greatest strengths are located and where are the opportunities that are in front of you right now to manifest what God's called you to be and to do. We also have 8 keys to discovering and mastering your niche market. No matter who you are, you have a unique calling with a unique audience, and God wants you to actually penetrate that mountain. We give you the step-by-step facilitated process, 8 steps literally to identifying and mastering your unique niche. And then while you're on your way up the mountain in your career, you're going to be dealing with new levels of intense warfare in your mind and in your heart. So we have breaking, controlling thought patterns. This powerful combination of leadership, niche marketing, and controlling your own thoughts is all available at the LanceWallnau.com/Cyber Monday site. You can download these items immediately.